Within RESPA, talking about the qualified written request on page 264, I left off at copies of documentation. A servicer must provide to the borrower at no charge within 15 days of the request copies of documentation and information relied upon by the servicer in making the determination that no error occurred. If the servicer determines that the information or documentation is privileged, confidential, or proprietary, the servicer must notify the borrower of this fact within 15 days of the servicer's receipt of the borrower's request for the documentation. Alternative compliance. If the servicer corrects an error within 5 days of receiving a notice, the servicer is not required to comply with the notice requirements but must notify the borrower of the correction. If the servicer receives a notice of error less than 7 days prior to a foreclosure sale, the servicer is not required to comply with the notice and response requirement. However, the servicer must make a good faith effort to respond orally or in writing and to correct any errors or state the reasons why none occur. Payment requirements. A servicer may not charge a fee or require payment to be made to the account as a condition of responding to a notice of error. Servicer remedies. A servicer may not report adverse information to any credit bureau if the payment is the subject of the notice of error for 60 days after the receipt of the notice of error. A servicer is not restricted from pursuing any remedy it has under applicable law except for errors asserted relating to foreclosure proceedings. Information requests. If servicer receives a qualified written request or a qualified request for information from a borrower, allowing the servicer to identify the name and account of the borrower and stating the information requested by the borrower, the servicer must comply with the following. A. The servicer must provide an acknowledgement in writing within 5 business days of its receipt. Thank you. The servicer must respond to the request by either providing the borrower with the information requested and contact information including a telephone number. 2. Conducting a reasonable search for the information and providing the borrower with a written notification that the information is not available to the servicer and stating the basis for the determination and providing contact information. 3. There is no 3. There's only time limits. A servicer must comply with these requirements not less than 10 business days if the information request for the identity of an address or other contact information of the owner or assignee of a mortgage loan, and for all other requests not less than 30 business days after the servicer receives the information request. This time limit may be extended by 15 business days if the servicer notifies the borrower in writing of the extension and the reason before the end of the 30-day period. There is an alternative compliance section here that the servicer is not required to comply with these requirements if the servicer responds to the borrower with the information requested and contact information within 5 business days of receiving the request. Exceptions in the following circumstances. A borrower is not required to respond or acknowledge information requests. And again, it's if it's a duplicative request, if they're requesting confidential, proprietary, or privileged information, whether the information is directly or not directly even related to the borrower's mortgage, if the request is overly broad or unduly burdensome or untimely, meaning 1 year after the loan was discharged or transferred from the servicer. If an exception applies, the servicer must notify the borrower within 5 business days the basis for which the servicer has determined that the exception applies. Payment limitations. A servicer may not charge a fee or require a payment to be made to the account as a condition of responding to a request for information. A servicer may charge a fee, if allowed by state law, for providing a beneficiary notice. Reminders. A servicer may furnish adverse information to a credit reporting agency and may pursue any remedy, including foreclosure, during the time period that the servicer is responding to an information request. Force Place Insurance Coverage. Force Place Insurance is hazard insurance obtained by a servicer on behalf of the owner or assignee of a mortgage loan that insures the property securing the loan. Exceptions. The following types of hazard insurance are not considered to be force-placed. Insurance required by the Flood Disaster Protection Act. Force Place Insurance is hazard insurance obtained by a servicer on behalf of the owner or assignee of the mortgage loan that insures the property securing the loan. That is why it does not include flood insurance, because we're talking about hazard insurance under RESPA. Insurance obtained by the borrower but renewed by the servicer according to this regulation is also an exception, and insurance obtained by the borrower but renewed by the servicer at its discretion with the borrower's agreement is also an exception to forced placement. When charging borrowers for force-placed insurance, a servicer may not assess a premium charge or fee related to force-placed insurance unless the servicer has a reasonable basis to believe that the borrower has failed to maintain hazard insurance. Before the servicer can charge a borrower for force-placed insurance, the servicer must deliver a written notice at least 45 days in advance of the charge and allow 15 days for the borrower to provide evidence that the insurance was in place. The notice requirement must include the date of the notice, the servicer's name and address, the borrower's name and address, a statement that requests the borrower to provide hazard insurance information for the property, and list the property's physical address. Furthermore, needs to include a statement that the borrower's hazard insurance has expired or is expiring, and the servicer does not have evidence that the borrower has hazard insurance coverage past the expiration date. A statement that hazard insurance is required on the property and that the servicer has or will purchase the insurance on at the borrower's expense. A description of the requested information and how the borrower can provide it, and a statement requesting the borrower to promptly provide the information. A statement that the insurance that servicer has or will purchase may cost significantly more than the borrower purchased insurance and may not provide as much coverage. The servicer's telephone number for borrower inquiries should be included, and if applicable, a statement advising the borrower to review additional information. The format of the notice to the borrower is only needs to be sent to one borrower, and other information may be included on a separate piece of paper. Meaning that you can't combine this notice on like the back of a statement. This is something that has to be separate. If you want to add an exhibit, it can't be merged into the letter. It has to be on a separate piece of paper. Reminder notice. A reminder notice must be delivered or mailed to the borrower at least 15 days before the fee is assessed and at least 30 days after the initial notice is sent. That contains the following: the date of the notice, a statement that the notice is the second and final notice, and the specific information required in the first notice. Further, the cost of force-placed insurance as an annual premium. If the servicer does not know the cost, an estimate must be stated. No proof of continuous coverage section. The servicer must send a notice if the servicer receives insurance information but not proof that coverage was continuous. The notice must include the date of the notice, the servicer's name and address, the borrower's name and address, a statement that the insurance is required on the property, and providing the physical address of the property. The servicer's telephone number for inquiries shall be provided, and if applicable, a statement advising the borrower to review additional information. Further, a statement that this is the final notice and the cost of force-placed insurance as an annual premium shall also be provided or estimated. The format, once again, must be oh my god, is only the required information may be on the notice. Other information may be included on a separate piece of paper. Updating notice, I should say. If the servicer receives new information after sending a notice that insurance will be force placed, the servicer does not have to update the information provided that the notice was in production a reasonable time prior to the servicer delivering to the borrower. Deliver a written notice, meaning if things crossed in the mail, you really don't have to send out another letter saying that. Oh my god. Computer. Okay, renewing force-placed insurance. Before a servicer assesses a premium for renewing or replacing force-placed insurance, the servicer must deliver written notice to the borrower at least 45 days before assessing the fee and not have received by the end of the 45 days evidence that the borrower has purchased insurance and that complies with the last contract, with the loan contract, I should say. If the servicer renews or replaces force-placed insurance and has evidence that the borrower did not have insurance during the time of the notice, the servicer may assess a fee for the insurance during the time period. Yeah, we're talking about the renewal notice right now, I think. So, it's about renewing force-placed insurance, say from like 12 months earlier, for example. And it can't really be done without sending that notice. And if the servicer renews or replaces force-placed insurance and has evidence that the borrower didn't have insurance during the same time, then the renewal notice shall be sent, and it shall include the date of the notice, the servicer's name and address, the borrower's name and address, the statement that requests the borrower to update the hazard insurance information on the property and identifies the property. A statement that the servicer previously purchased insurance for the property and assessed the cost to the borrower because the servicer did not have evidence that the property was insured. Oh my gosh, there's lots of other requirements. There's a statement that the insurance and the servicer purchased has expired or is expiring if applicable, and the servicer intends to maintain the insurance by renewing or replacing it. A statement that the force-placed insurance may cost significantly more than insurance purchased by the borrower and that it may not provide as much coverage. The cost shall be included of the insurance as an annual premium, and if not known, that should be estimated. A statement should also be provided that if the borrower purchases insurance, he or she should promptly notify the servicer, and a description of the requested insurance information, that it must be provided in writing, and how the borrower can supply the information, and the servicer's telephone number for inquiries. If applicable, a statement that the borrower should review additional information provided within the same transmittal. The format, once again, should really just be distinct, and if more information is being provided, it should be provided on a completely separate piece of paper. The frequency of the notice. Last section before servicing policies and procedures. Or is it not? No, because there's a cancellation section and there's a limitation on force-placed insurance. So, before each anniversary of the force-placed policy, the servicer must mail the written notice, but it is not required to be sent more than once per year. If mailing, notice must be sent by using at least first-class mail. If mailing, I should say. The notice needs first-class mail postage. Cancellation. The servicer must cancel a force-placed policy within 15 days of receiving evidence that the borrower has sufficient hazard insurance in place. If applicable, the servicer must refund any premium charges and fees for the period of the overlap. I'm kind of wondering now, what if they had inadequate insurance? Then what do you do? Nevertheless, the last section is limitations on force-placed insurance. All charges for force-placed insurance must be bona fide and reasonable For example, it must bear a reasonable relationship to the servicer's cost of providing the service. Probably gonna break before going into servicing policies and procedures. Yep, probably, definitely.